Hello, everyone. So, I have an update regarding narrative abuse, which I covered in the previous episode, where I laid out the structure of Liana Kerzner's call with the police, and where she twisted essentially the message that Asher posted on Twitter and completely owned herself because she actually ended up quoting herself as a death threat. In that episode, we went over the mechanics of what narrative abuse consists of. The elements of narrative abuse consist of rewriting history, casting themselves as the victim instead of the perpetrator, spreading false narratives about the other person, and controlling the public story so that the target's perspective is dismissed, and assigning identities or motives to the target, with also selective storytelling by omitting facts that would change how events are understood. So, as of today, in Liana Kerzner's It's Not Therapy YouTube channel, where comments are open, you will notice something very interesting. The episode in which Asher was interviewed as an attempt to fight the stigma of borderline personality disorder is still one of the most successfully viewed episodes. 160 views, which is more views than most of the other episodes. Now, when all of this began, Asher posted on that episode the following statement. This episode was intended for people to learn more about the struggles of people with severe borderline personality disorder so that they might be more understanding and compassionate towards individuals who suffer from it. I was told it would help highlight that people with cluster B personality disorders suffer too, even when they are acting in a way that may be difficult to bear. The point was not to foist symptoms on others, but to remind others that when they judge the actions of the sufferer, which they must, they should consider that they are also suffering and not simply villains in their lives. This was the understanding I had, the understanding my husband had, and the understanding that Liana appeared to promise. That's why I participated. I hate my voice, and being on the mic without people being able to see me. My involvement with Liana Kerzner has turned out to be the opposite of what she led me to expect. It is sickening to me that she's using my voice and my story to keep selling what is essentially a pretense of care. Here are the examples of Liana's care, from my point of view. These have occurred over the last 12 months. She has failed to legitimately address with any consistency any of them, choosing instead to continue in the same direction. After Liana Kerzner published a video about her and my husband's Kickstarter project being cancelled, where she was factually incorrect and otherwise inappropriate, she has spent a year misandristically and homophobically doubling down on claims and behaviors concerning me. Liana Kerzner has publicly portrayed me as involved in a project to others, but I was not. Liana Kerzner has publicly portrayed me as self-loathing lunatic man-child who didn't get my obligatory head pats, suggesting I have a pattern of transphobia and misogyny. Liana Kerzner has publicly portrayed me as feigning confusion over accusations of pedophilia to manipulate others into defending me while simultaneously engaging with pedophilic content, which I don't. Liana Kerzner has publicly portrayed me as someone whose lack of impulse control endangers everyone whenever I do something she has decided a normal person wouldn't do. Normal, specifically, being her. Liana Kerzner has publicly portrayed me as an abuser whose entire nature revolves around raging, seething, and screaming at my husband, and everyone else around, for days. Liana Kerzner has publicly portrayed me as perpetuating mental health stigma because I cry about having a mental illness whenever I'm held accountable, while she made another inappropriate video where she portrays me deliberately provoking her trauma response, making her simultaneously proud and not to blame for what she said. Liana Kerzner blames career troubles I have nothing to do with on me, saying I'm attacking her livelihood and calling me a cyberstalker for publicly participating regarding a public figure but not contacting her directly. Liana Kerzner uses childish names to lump me in a moment's notice with Emily Schooley, whom she calls Stalker Chan, and whomever else she doesn't like that week. Liana Kerzner spins paranoid tales of me working with a shadowy network of stalkers because someone else who refuses to talk to me and ban me used an image that's publicly available on my website and that I had removed from their blog twice. Liana Kerzner has sent me multiple threatening legal notices full of demands that don't mean anything to me for several reasons, but primarily because they don't make sense in a clear, to me, effort to stifle my free expression. Liana Kerzner claims I'm silencing her, actively taking away her free speech rights, and not allowing her to walk away when, according to her advice on the show, her actions aren't under my control. Liana Kerzner has twice now transformed my and my husband's words and sentiments into placeholders for bitch, despite clearly avoiding that term because there's no reason to say it. Liana Kerzner has publicly claimed that I am sending her abusive messages anonymously, and in response to videos showing evidence of who he may actually not be, not me, she portrayed it as my husband spending 56 minutes accusing her of ignoring transphobia. If these descriptions seem over the top and extremely biased, I must inform you that I did not come up with all of them. Many of those adjectives and the framing are lifted from various things Liana Kerzner has said about my situation over the last 12 months. On the surface, Liana doesn't say my name and believes that it offers her impenetrable protection. It doesn't. But assuming it does, she will say anything about me or whoever else she has an issues with. This is problematic in multiple ways. It's Not Therapy focuses on mental health care. It acts as a commercial for her services alongside her YouTube channel, and so people reach out to Liana, some of whom suffer significant distress. You can't preemptively screen those who reach out. Not only does Liana Kerzner feel free to broadcast personal grievances with people she is familiar with, but she also feels free to talk about them in at least one episode under the guise that it has no effect if she doesn't say who they are. But it does affect someone who's already off balance in their life and suffering. For many, they are highly aware that Liana is talking about them. Even if they don't know that some random listener among the 3 million who may listen won't know, they have an emotional reaction not only to her response, but to the fact that it was broadcast in public. They are also aware that Liana most likely shares a number of details with her paying audience on a regular basis. My husband and I have demonstrated this, something that no one is obligated to keep private and is now publicly available. To Liana, however, the minds of her listeners matter more. Her image remains intact via the presumably complete disconnection, and everything's fine. The person reaching out for help's condition and subsequent reactions are entirely on them. It is indeed their responsibility, and I agree. However, it's a callous, even unethical response to someone who's reaching out because they have a deep psychological issue in the first place. Those individuals become stripped of that condition when they are held to the standards of individuals who don't suffer from it, Those individuals become stripped of that condition when they are held to the standards of individuals who don't suffer from it, making them only bad crazy in convenient relation to the message, but entirely sane otherwise. Beyond that, a significant number of people, her paying audience, are aware, and those beyond can easily become aware of, who she is talking about. Rather than describe me or my husband as people, she uses phrases like known commodity. I'm not a commodity, nor apparently am I even known, since she gets everything about me wrong. Liana Kerzner engages in this type of behavior every week on this show, on her YouTube channel, where her services are also advertised, and on her pay-to-access Patreon and Discord servers. If this were simply advice for living like a life coach, it wouldn't matter. Alarmingly, her services are marketed as an alternative to therapy for those who can't afford therapy. So it does matter because she will attract mentally and financially vulnerable individuals to her to then talk about for views. Case in point, my husband and I are currently unable to afford legal counsel, which is something Liana would have known after having been our close friend for 5 to 6 years. Above all else, Liana Kerzner has never addressed the falsehoods in the original video or taken ownership of her actions, presumably because it's not about the announcement video, but because I, a 42-year-old man, am angry that she said bullshit to me, told me the truth about lacking impulse control, and didn't get a head pat as a gay man from a red-haired woman that I obviously take out all my self-loathing on. Regarding me, Liana Kerzner says there's a cherry-picked pattern of targets anyone can notice to prove my trans misogyny, ignoring the more nuanced reality that I'm contentious and argue about topics with everyone because that's my passion. Liana Kerzner is under the impression, judging from what we've heard from her lawyer, that there's no reason to address the contents of the video since she went to great lengths to protect us from our own consequences, which we never asked for, save us from hardship and embarrassment, despite not being embarrassed, and spent a year running interference to stop whom? that we never wanted. She may have gone to great lengths, but sometimes we do that and it doesn't pan out. In this case, it did not. I have written about this numerous times since. Liana Kerzner publicly told us that if we see anything negative in her behavior, it's because that's what we want to see, not what's actually there. Liana Kerzner publicly says that if we see ourselves in her descriptions of awful behavior, that's because we feel guilty and need to sit with that, not that we see ourselves in the setup being associated with harmful behavior that didn't occur. This is why I always make it clear that she must not be talking about me, then, every time I comment on my own digital space. Liana Kerzner publicly claims I twist innocent phrases to mean things they don't by stripping them of intentional context. At the same time, she simultaneously ascribes motivations and meanings to everything I do and say because it's all structural and intention is irrelevant. Liana Kerzner has carelessly placed me rhetorically in the same category as individuals who alter screenshots, present things out of order, strip all context, and inappropriately bias a manufactured narrative when I haven't done those things. Liana Kerzner has complained that my husband and I have breached and violated her lawyers, and her community's privacy despite nothing we've shared requiring any legal protection to the best of our knowledge. I understand that doesn't mean they can't claim the violation on non-legal grounds. Still, we are extremely reticent to mitigate our legitimate expression since it would place us on very biased terrains, since Liana Kerzner told a story that wasn't hers to tell, mine, twice. The first time is what kicked off the chain of events. Over the last 12 months concerning my situation, not because I disliked the way she talked to me while she was experiencing a trauma response, which I definitely did, she spills the tea with such inaccuracies and disdainful self-endorsement that it's wreaked havoc on my reputation and my mental health. Despite all of this, Liana Kerzner has refused to remove my part of episode 47 of It's Not Therapy at my request, benefiting from my wonderful personality and insight while simultaneously assassinating my character and falsely portraying me as all of the above. I don't understand why. She has publicly claimed it's evidence of a transgression on my part, but hasn't elaborated on what it is. Liana Kerzner has spent the last 12 months refraining from elaboration on much on anything with any substance when it doesn't have to do with how horrible, weird, ghastly, and pathetic my husband and I are. Her community appears to go along with this behavior and even celebrates it. According to Liana Kerzner's branding, they are good crazy, while the former friends and members, like me, are bad crazy. It's a non-therapeutic environment rife with toxicity, with vulnerable members who, while under Liana's surprisingly formidable influence, may not realize just how problematic her advice is or how toxically they are behaving and thinking. Many are seeking guidance in social cues, which Liana provides in her signature sparkling style. What Liana Kerzner doesn't tell you, and what you're never to really ask lest you trigger a trauma response, is what happens between her and those she has a falling out with. Most of them, being vulnerable and generally powerless, are cowed, embarrassed, or intimidated, or too stressed out to talk about what it looks like. Often it's bizarre, abusive, or both, all easily explained by her trauma. Many finally take her advice to stop and walk away from any slight, since you can't do anything about it. You'll never get results. And when it comes to her, she's right, and that's not a good thing. What's strange to me is that she tends to post this about every month or so in different forums, as if people need to keep hearing it concerning her. My husband and I have not done that, and look at the effects. And that's the Liana everyone should know. But somehow they're magically forever unaware. I know that my husband and I were unaware for an extended period. Had we been aware, we would have made very different choices. As it is, we couldn't make informed decisions and fell victim to an interpersonal process that repeats itself. And others have begun to notice. All Liana Kerzner has reinforced in my life, and I'm a pretty astute guy, is that I am only to be used, abused, and then discarded. I loathe saying this, but I can't bring myself to excuse it. From my vantage point, it sure seems, even feels, as though it's because I'm a cisgender white American trans-species gay male from the American West who suffers from a string of various diagnoses at one time or another. Over the last 12 months, and 2 letters from her famous lawyer Dr. Mark Burry, Liana Kerzner's message has been loud and clear. She cares about me as a useful abstraction, but not as a person. The message I keep gathering from everything she says is, I do not matter as a person because I don't do what's appropriate to participate in society publicly, which is to unfairly criticize her by naming her in my criticisms. I've posted things like this before, requesting that my part in the episode be taken down. It is up to Liana Kerzner to respond with the compassion she promises and meet me at a middle ground, respect my boundaries as she would call them, and take it down. So far, she has put an enigmatic onus on me in a letter from her lawyer that I failed to comprehend. Her radio show may offer sound advice, but if you are neurodivergent, Liana Kerzner will not support you when the going gets tough. She will do the opposite. My situation is living proof. Asher Wolfstein. That was the comment that laid for many months on the YouTube channel. Liana Kerzner, very recently, completely erased it. Asher can still see it, which means that the comment is hidden. Well, today at 7:36 a.m., Liana Kerzner had this to say. As someone who has been viciously harassed for 18 months, in part because I refused to remove a factual interview because it made someone retroactively feel bad, it's been awful, but not surprising, to see how the entire concept of journalism is being systematically dismantled. Journalism is not designed to make you feel good or stroke your ego. It's designed to provide facts. Women journalists get especially bad when we do not actively soothe an egomaniac's ego. See Trump and Kristen Walker. But journalism is a tough job for everyone. Don't get me wrong. And then she goes on to self-based for a little while. You can see the scroll here. I will not dig my voice on her words anymore. But I want you to take a look at what is happening right there, right now. You're seeing narrative abuse at work. Liana Kerzner just rewrote history. So, in one fell swoop, we have a rewriting of history and assigning motives to someone. Because you see, she's telling you that somehow the interview has retroactively made Asher feel bad. And then that's the reason why he wants that episode taken down. Now, Asher's letter very much states that Asher finds his presence on that episode absolutely unconscionable because at this moment it is advertisement for Liana Kerzner and it's an advertisement she does not deserve. Liana Kerzner is an abuser. She just took all of Asher's words and made them mean something entirely different to her audience in order to serve her image as this principled journalist. And I can tell you this, a journalist is supposed to have adherence to the truth as one of their greatest ideals. But to this day, she still hasn't said anything about what she did to Mitchell Jura and his privacy as her client, or Giant Enemy Crab, or what she said to Song Eriksson in her server. And the only reason she admitted to the Kickstarter breach is because her husband shat the bed and confessed in the middle of the Kickstarter tirade, where he was essentially trying to spin so hard that he ended up coming across into the other end of the spectrum and shat the bed. And even then, they're still continuing to try to spin that into it. It was always meant to happen. No, it was fine. There was nothing. No. Here's a little thing to think about. If this was not a big deal, the Kickstarter breach, why didn't Liana Kerzner simply say, oh, yeah, you're right. That happened. It wasn't something that should have happened. We fixed it. That's all. I apologize to the backers. She didn't do that. Instead, she kept lying and lying and denying and denying and denying. So why did she do that? Of course, you'll notice on the website, if you go and read the website, my prediction on that website is that Liana Kerzner would immediately start to try to claim that her husband was abusing her as a way to kind of make people back off from that situation. But here's the thing. I reported that, first of all, not because I believe Liana Kerzner is a victim of abuse. In fact, she is the one who brought up abuse as a narrative when that fact came online, because it's essentially a way to try to put out the fire. Because her entire episode is, it's abuse to not cover up abuse. And I'm sorry, that is bullshit. Here we have someone who is essentially trying to soft code that she may or may not be getting abused, and that is incredibly immoral to point out that she's getting abused, so you better step away from that. It's a whole bunch of theater so that you don't talk about the Kickstarter issue ever again. Because it's the one thing that Stephen Joel Kerzner actually confirmed against his better judgment. So it is very convenient for her that you don't talk about that. Just like it's very convenient for her that you don't talk about what you just did to Asher. Because again, just like in the section that he wrote that Liana Kerzner twisted into a death threat with her own stupid words, my God, she has just abused Asher yet again in front of everyone. And there is a video that I would really like for you to watch. In this video by Dr. Darren McGee, he goes into a lot of the mechanisms that Liana is employing right now, especially in her portrayal of Asher. I want to remind you that Liana Kerzner is now claiming that we have harassed her horribly for 18 months. What does that harassment look like? We've posted evidence of her lies online because she lied about us first every single time. That is harassment to this woman. Asher has been painted as running an extortion racket, but at no point have we ever said, you need to do this or we will do this. When the evidence started coming out, we made it explicitly clear that nothing was going to change the fact that we were publishing the evidence. Asher and I held back for 16 months, giving Liana Kerzner the opportunity to do the right thing and set the record straight. But at no point did we ever threaten her. However, she made this skeet, which is very much extortion. Asher said no to the skeet. Now here's the interesting thing. You'll notice this. Do you see that? The skeet that, well, the tweet that Liana Kerzner has screen capped? It's the beginning of the very long tweet that Liana Kerzner claimed was Asher making a death threat. I want you to take a look at the time. 8:28 a.m., May 31st, 2026. You with me so far? Good. So let's read her skeet together so that it fixes itself on the mind, shall we? Customer service, the novelty factor hosting way. She's not a customer, by the way. The relationship terminated. You take down the docs, issue a full retraction of the misrepresentations you have made about me, and stop doxing customers that you then deny were ever customers until they prove you lied, and I'm happy to stop talking about you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is extortion, right then and there. Now, I want you to take a look at that time again. You see that? You see it? Good, excellent. Because here's the interesting thing. This is the beginning of the thread where Asher allegedly makes that death threat, according to Liana Kerzner, the admission that he wants to hurt people. Okay. Well, obviously Liana has read that thread by then, but that's what she chose to lead with. This skeet that pretty much reads like an extortion threat. Asher basically said no. What happened next? Well, we opened the police report right here, and as you can see, entry date 31st of May, 9:40 with 34 seconds a.m. Complainant Liana Kerzner. So, if Liana Kerzner clearly saw intent to harm and she couldn't just live with herself if people had gotten hurt, what the fuck was she doing between 8:28 a.m. and 9:40 a.m.? If, people's lives were at risk according to her, which of course I don't believe, did she have some flapjacks to get the fortitude to call? I don't know about you, but if I am under the belief that people's lives are at risk, every second counts. So, why did Liana Kerzner wait an hour and 20 minutes thereabouts to make that call? Asher's response to that skeet was very much a firm no. First of all, because most of those things are false. We have doxed no one. Giancarlo Manzini was never a customer of a novelty factor. And we have no reason to apologize to anyone for outing a transphobic troll who was endangering people, even though Liana Kerzner really, really wants to protect him, and you really have to ask yourself why. And if Liana Kerzner wants to imply that the very ugly fight was a business communication, and that therefore by posting it online, we have doxed her, I would like to remind Mrs. Kerzner that even if that fiction were true and that had been a business communication, the abusive and insulting manner in which she conducted herself when my husband did no such thing would have been more than enough grounds to terminate the relationship right then and there professionally, but also to expose an abusive, demeaning, and cruel customer to the world as a caveat emptor. So if Mrs. Kerzner wants to treat that as a business communication, I will gladly cover it on this channel and show you exactly what Liana Kerzner claims is the best way to conduct business. Actually, that video has already been recorded and it is on a hidden premiere, which at a certain date will go live. So keep your eyes out on that. Liana Kerzner called the second dispatch call to the police, using, again, the same thread that she screen capped to make this skeet to claim that Asher was threatening to kill people. Now, I have to ask you a question. If that really was a threat that Asher was making and she was so worried and she just couldn't live with herself if someone had gotten hurt, why didn't she sound the alarm at 8:28 a.m.? Why was this the skeet that she opened her salvo with? Extortion. And since Asher said no, well, I guess you could see it as Liana Kerzner reaching for her enforcers and trying to get Asher in trouble. Because again, remember, she claimed Asher was homicidal, suicidal, and also a crazy animal man. That's why 3 policemen show up to her door. And as I've already pointed out, such encounters in welfare checks, if the person is in fact truly dangerous, or if the police are nervous enough, can end the person's life. And that is now why Liana Kerzner has decided to yet again violate my husband, his autonomy, his words, erase them, and now she has set herself to rewrite them for you, to tell you what it is that he's really, really, really wanting and why he wants it. Chalk up one more count of abuse to Liana Kerzner. And at this point, I'm going to predict what is going to happen next, because you see, we finally put together some interesting facts and data points about accounts such as Jimmy Linguini, Ed the Suck, and Transtruth Teller. And I am going to predict, and I hope I'm wrong for Mrs. Kerzner's sake, that within a few days or weeks, a mysterious account that she will tell everyone is us may start appearing to, quote, harass her, which will then give her reason to call the police. I would like to remind Mrs. Kerzner that, as she saw in the letter that she received on Saturday from a qualified professional, that we have now availed ourselves of extremely qualified people who are capable of digging to the truth and heart of these matters, and that therefore such a character would be very poorly timed. If such a character does emerge, and she has the good sense to not claim it is us, we would be more than happy to share our considerable professional resources, as she saw by the letter that she received, in order to unearth the true identity of whomever it is may be harassing her or threatening her. But I do intend to be very serious when I say that we will not tolerate any accusations where suck puppetry is used to further denigrate my husband or myself. Liana Kerzner, we have no need to contact you outside of regular channels. I have all of your emails, as you saw, because you received those letters from the professional to each one of those. If I wanted to say anything to you directly, I would, and so would my husband. And in fact, you could actually end this very easily. It is probably the hardest thing in the world for you, because I have now demonstrated how easily abuse comes to you. You could just let us the fuck be our own people. Stop creating people in your mind and moving them around like puppets and then explaining to the entire world that that's what they do. Because you saw that video right here from the doctor? Yeah, that is what abusers do. That is why the whole thing is, why does nobody believe me? Because you're an abuser. And every single day that you do this, you demonstrate it. And these videos and the following documentation are evidence, and they are not going to go away. As we speak, all of these videos have been uploaded to different internet archives, as well as Vimeo and other places, so they're not going away. You could really do yourself a solid and actually stop creating sock puppets of people in your mind, parade them in front of your audience, and tell everybody that you know why they really do this, why they really do that. Actually engage with their fucking words and their fucking arguments instead of painting them for yourself some strange straw man that you can actually combat because, well, I guess that we both know that you're not deeply qualified to handle actual arguments. So you have to, like Don Quixote, tilt at shadows. But I also want to make it clear that every time you do some movement of narrative abuse, we will report it and document it. My poor husband cried today in desperation and despair in seeing himself erased, rewritten, manipulated, and turned into a caricature and facsimile by a mental health advocate. And I fully expect Liana Kerzner to display her cruel and vicious nature in yet again mocking Asher for crying, just like she did when she made this episode. Remember, she's a mental health advocate. You might not catch it in the episode because she doesn't mention it for a reason, but those two men she talks about, they're us. And we're married. And the reason that's important is that she talks about them as if they're just acquaintances or bros, covering up for each other. Here as a closer, is the statement that Asher has made today. Today, I noticed that my comments on It's Not Therapy's episode featuring my interview, which have been up for a fairly long time as I understand it, are gone. They've been hidden or scrubbed. It shows 0 comments to other users. I thought that was odd. I no longer think it's odd. What I fear came true, unfortunately. I think that it's yet another move by the show's host and my former friend for 5 years, Liana Kerzner's mental health journalist, advocate against stigma, YouTuber, Twitch streamer, radio host, and peer counselor, to rebrand herself at, most likely, my further expense. I've noticed recently, though not immediately, that she has put Survivor more to come in her Blue Sky bio. Today, the next foreboding step has been taken. With my previous comments now gone, Liana Kerzner posted the following today on Blue Sky. I've already read you that statement, so we'll continue. My publicly posted reasons are also factual, and I've come to understand by Kerzner that facts can never be removed from any act of journalism. Yet, the facts concerning what I've said my reasons for removal are, being that it's exploitation, are now removed. So, Kerzner has gone against her own interpretation of journalistic integrity while complaining about journalistic integrity in her rebranding, most likely centered around her being a survivor of 18 months of vicious harassment at my hands, allegedly. This is quite ominous to me, considering the last 2 weeks of escalation by Liana Kerzner that involved 2 disturbing welfare checks based on completely erroneous and even irrelevant information. I see this as the next escalation, a future where perhaps my persona and public character reaches hand puppet maturity and becomes a full-blown fictional character, but not really, within her new brand, the dark, self-loathing serial killer talking villainous black hole that eternally sucks value out of the productive and societally exceptional, like Liana Kerzner literally described herself when I said, quote, I don't believe Liana Kerzner is a terrible person. Terrible people can't get better. To Liana, even this sliver of compassion and human dignity is vicious harassment comprised of mediocre men laughably instructing an exceptional woman on how to get better, putting their unexamined misogyny on full display. While she was posting at least dozen posts about how I was a terrible person, I posted that I didn't think she was the same. She could get better. She said terrible people, implying us very clearly, cannot. And that was me harassing her. And that seems like that's going to be the center of her new branding. A total fiction inevitably tied to a real person. Me. This is plain exploitation, beyond simply opinion. And once again, Liana Kerzner of Saga 960 AM, peer counselor, alleged mental health advocate, stigma warrior, and police caller. And, in my opinion, considering what I showed you today, extortionist. Oh, and narrative abuser.